Okay, welcome everyone to another episode for H&D Abroad. I'm Dee. H&D Abroad is all about helping couples consider moving abroad as a plan A for embracing a healthy lifestyle and creating and generating that generational wealth. And so we are here today having that wealth conversation with our friend and um, accounting professional, Odessa. So, Odessa, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
Hello, my name is Odessa Jordan, and let's see, I've been in the field of accounting for almost 20 years now, and with with a little touch here in technology and data analysis and all that wonderful stuff. But I had my own business that I ran for consulting of small businesses, helping them to get in line with the requirements that they needed for tax filing, for keeping up with their sales tax and getting things together for their actual full-time accountant. I was their intermediary for
Mhm.
that. And currently, for the past 13 plus years, I have taught at various colleges and university on the East Coast and in the South, accounting and tax classes. So I was asked to come in and give some guidance, a little bit of guidance to those who are wanting to live abroad and how to prepare for a different lifestyle and be aware of the financial implications and tax implications that you may run into. And so I'm
Yeah.
here to help.
So today's episode is all about the bookkeeping. Um, some 7 tips to help you think about things you can be doing all the way up to that April filing deadline that we all aim for, and the considerations for things that you can be taking care of or connections you could be making to make things so much easier. There's a lot of pressure on those of us who are wanting to be in compliance, but this is a busy time of year for Odessa and all accountants. So giving her a shout out for right in April saying yes for us to produce this for you all today. So um, as we are looking at getting ready to move, so Herman and I are preparing to move abroad. We're wanting to align ourselves with, hey, this is what we do when we're in the States. We use different software. What would be kind of your first tip for folks that are either getting ready to move or are already moving abroad? We're already, let's say we're at April 19th. And I've got a whole 12 months ahead of me. What would be an important first tip to remember?
I like that, starting at April 19th, but I want to kind of push it back a little further.
Okay.
Let's start at January the 1st, the beginning of the year, because we're going to keep track of everything that we are going to earn and expense on starting January 1. So we starting at April is not detrimental, but hopefully up until April you've kept track of some things. I would probably say the first thing that you want to do, two things, and they're kind of, I don't know which would come first. It's like, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? But I would strongly suggest in that first list of things to do, you number one want to secure a tax professional
Mm,
that you trust that can help you for the next 12 months in keeping track of your expenses and your income, that specializes in those living abroad, the expats that are out there. it is, if you cannot find someone like that, the IRS does have a place on their website that you can go that gives you a listing of tax professionals that you can use that are also living abroad or here based in the United States that can help you to keep track of your expenses and your finances that may impact your taxes in the upcoming year. So that's the one of the first things. The second first thing, so the 1A and 1B. So
Mhm.
1B would be securing some sort of software to help you to start keeping track of your income and your finances. So depending on whether you're going to keep your bank that you have already here and just use it as you're living abroad, many banks have an online banking that you can use, and they easily integrate with some of the software that's out there like Mint Mobile. There's also, and I'm not, this is, these are, I'm not sponsored by anyone. I'm just putting out there things that you can use. There's also Quicken. Mint Mobile, a lot of people like to use because it is free. Quicken is one of my go to favorites, but there is an expense involved. So perhaps you don't want to spend that money initially at this point in time. Mint will do very well. There are a few others. And for those who are just like, listen, I don't have time for all of that, it's called Excel. It's a wonderful software that comes usually packaged with your laptop. If not, you can do a subscription with Microsoft
Mhm.
uh, 365 or 360, I think they call it now. And so it comes with Excel, and you can start using the different cells to help you add up and keep track of your expenses, what's going out and what's coming in. I and with that, the second thing I would recommend is using either some sort of software. I can't, there's bill.com. I can't remember a few of the others, but listen, we're trying to be smart about this thing, smart and easy. Take your cell phone and you take a picture of all of your receipts and keep track
Yes.
of that. For those of you who are Google people, you can put it in Google somewhere and put
Make a
a
folder.
password. Yeah, huh?
Mhm.
Password protected. For the Apple folks, you can put it in notes or wherever you want to put it. And you just start saving all of your receipts, because I don't know about you, depending on where you get your receipts from, they're burning the images on the paper. And after a
They
while,
will erase.
they
That's right.
erase, or if you
Mhm.
leave in the car and anywhere where there's UV light, they'll literally turn black and burn up, and you won't see the image anymore. And then on top of that, there's just tons of little pieces of paper everywhere, and who wants to keep track of that? And so, if you can at least keep a digital copy, use your cell phone to keep track of that, put it in a file, whatever you feel comfortable with, to keep track of those types of things so that you have a hard copy of what you've spent. I would even suggest, and I know this is over the top, but even your stub, if you get a stub or something like that. But if it's in your bank, it's okay, because you could always do a running list of those sorts of things and get a printout. But sometimes the IRS can get a little persnickety, and you may need to have a receipt to prove date and time and what you spent, those sorts of
Mhm.
things. So you want to keep a hard copy in the wild case that you may get audited. And so
Mhm.
you want to keep those things in place. And that also helps your tax professional, consultant, or planner that you have secured, that you can give them these things. And please, as an accountant, please keep it organized as best that you can. Because if we have to sift through and scroll and scroll and scroll, I'm like, what was that? A little
Time
description.
time is money, but
Indeed.
also, you really wanna get to the point, set yourself up for success
Mm-hmm.
by using a lot of these online tools. Even
Mm-hmm.
just the photo itself, it will take you so much farther, because I've seen people take like a bag, like a paper bag, and that's their receipt.
Yes.
And so they just bring this bag to H&R Block And so the person has to go through it. But yeah, just a little bit of organization will take you so much farther. So I think when we first started the conversation, was mentioning to you, before we got on, about another YouTuber that I follow, Picky Girl Travels, and she had a presentation earlier this month, Move Abroad and Break Up with Uncle Sam. So, some people are under the impression, whether you are leaving the US for a short term time period, like 3 or 6 months, or hey, I have sold my house, my cars, I don't have a US address, then I don't owe anything else to Uncle Sam, as we call it, or the government, as a lot of people are calling it now. Do what would you say in relationship to um, you know our obligation to the Internal Revenue Service and our time abroad?
Yes, one of the obligations as a US citizen, regardless of whether we live abroad temporarily for a short period of time, 6 months, 12 months, or a longer period of time, as a US citizen, we are obligated, as a part of that, to file our taxes. So we will never really remove ourselves from the US family, um, unless you give up your citizenship. So you want to be mindful of, that is an obligation that we are we still must honor by making sure that we file, um, our taxes. And this year, the tax filing date for citizens living overseas, um, is usually 2 months out, so it's June the 15th. So we and the for the those of us who live here, it's April the 18th, because the 15th falls on a Saturday. But we want to be mindful that even though we have that extended time, that may not be the best time for us to
Mm,
file.
mhm.
We are misinformed in thinking, oh, I have until June to get my stuff together. Not a problem. Um, Indeed, you do. However, if you owe the U.S. federal government, IRS, money, then you need to make that payment, even though you may have an extension to file until June. And
Mhm.
so, that can be a challenge. I tell this to my clients, even who get extension until October. Yes, you have an extension to October to file your taxes.
File.
However, if you owe money, it is due by April the 15th, or in this case, the 18th of this year. So you're not going to get around when they want their coins, they want their coins. So we have to make sure that they have that, and then we can file later out. And if we need to, if we overpaid when we did pay by whatever we paid by the 18th of this year, then we can do a, I just lost my train of thought.
Amended.
Yes, amendment, for that, and then it'll be, adjusted or what have you. So we no, we cannot, we cannot, move away from our obligation to pay taxes to the federal government, at least.
Absolutely. There are many strings that continue to or tether us to the US. Um, and so we want to be thoughtful and aware
Mhm.
that our actions can have a domino effect. So
Mhm.
let's get organized and
Mhm.
try to put in place these bookkeeping um, these practical tips that Odessa's sharing with us today about, hey, what could I be thinking about that might be eligible, if I am a private citizen that has I'm self-employed.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that what are s- what are some things that I could be using, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or could be considering keeping receipts for? Because at this point, we're keeping receipts for everything.
Yes. Yeah, especially because even though you're living abroad, you still can do a standardized deduction or an itemized deduction. So that still means that if you have any medical expenses, any of the stuff that falls on that schedule A, you still have access to be able to claim. So that you still have those things. And so you want to be mindful of that. In addition to that, there are some foreign earned income and housing exclusions and deductions that you may qualify for. And then we also have, what was the other one? The earned income, yes, earned income in the foreign housing. So you may qualify for any or one of those things in the deductions. And so you want to be able to keep, it's better to keep until you say, "Oh, I don't need it." Once
Hmm.
you're doing your taxes, you talk to your tax professional, which leads me to, I think I'm on number 4. I know that most people don't want to do this, but I always tell my clients and even my students the best US citizen is an informed US citizen.
Hmm.
Yes, you may have a professional accountant, an attorney, you may have a favorite doctor, physician, even the surgeon. There are specialists all over that you can use for various things throughout your life, but you must be informed and be in the know as to what they're talking about. You can't blindly depend on a human to be aware or know everything. Or and it's not just a, I'm not talking about a trust factor here. You have to be aware,
Hmm.
because at the end of the day, if your tax professional makes a mistake, or they fail to ask you a particular question that is
Hmm.
meaningful to the preparation of your taxes, and it goes unspoken of, and then when your taxes are filed and you end up having to pay money that you didn't think you were, or perhaps you were owed an additional refund or more of a refund than you were given, we can't then be angry. Well, we can be angry with the tax professional, but many times if they don't ask, or if they don't know, if you don't divulge, some things may be forgotten or left on the table. And so you always want to be aware, at least, of the guidelines. And so,
Hmm.
as a US citizen living abroad, publication 54, you can go to the IRS and go to the search engine at the top of the IRS website, irs.gov, and where it has a little magnifying glass, type in publication 54. It's a 35-page PDF document, a little light reading, some heavy reading. But what it does in a lovely way, it does have an index, and it's 7 chapters. And the chapters are as follows. Chapter 1 talks about filing information. So, what are your filing requirements? If you have a non resident alien spouse, but we're treating them as a resident, estimating your tax payments, other forms that you may have to file as living abroad. Then, chapter 2 talks about withholding your taxes. There's a 30% flat fee withholding, Social Security and Medicare taxes. What does that look like? Because I'm not living in the US.
Hmm.
So it'll answer the questions or give you information that you may have that may answer many of your questions. Chapter 3 is talking about self employment. We're just mentioning that I'm
Right.
living abroad. I've got a side hustle. I've got a YouTube channel or something else going on. what does that look like? Who must pay self employment tax, exemption from a dual country Social Security and Medicare taxes? So that's going to be talked about in Chapter 3. Chapter 4, foreign income and housing deduction and exclusion. So, who qualifies for these exclusions and who qualifies for these said deductions?
Mhm.
Very, very important chapter because some of the documents that you're scanning or taking pictures of may directly apply to Chapter 4 in allowing you to file deductions, or you may be excluded from filing certain deductions that you think you should have access to.
Mm.
So, very, very important. Chapter 5 talks about deductions and credits. We're talking about contributions to foreign charitable organizations, your IRA. Those of you who are
Mm.
still planning for retirement while you're living abroad, that's a good chapter for you to be aware of. And then chapter 6 talks about tax treaty benefits. You may be going to a country where there may be some sort of tax treaty involved with the United States. You need to be aware of that if that will further reduce your tax
Mhm.
um, um, um,
Liability.
obligations.
Yeah. Mhm.
Common benefits, competent authority assistance, and obtaining copies of those tax treaties, how to get access to them, and all the other stuff. And then chapter 7 is just like a follow up how to get tax help, which is really helpful for those who are saying, okay, I need a little bit more information than what this document is giving me. Where can I go? And so, chapter 7 will provide additional information for you. And then following after that is an index. And so the IRS does try to be quite helpful, contrary to popular belief. Because listen, they want to make sure there's no confusion. And so they rather you ask questions, email them. They have different helplines that you can have access to. But again, some of our tax preparation and reporting may be a little bit more complex than others, especially when you're, as we just said, you have a retirement plan, you may have some dependents that are coming with you, you may still have a house in the US, or maybe you bought or purchased a house abroad instead of just renting or
Mhm.
leasing. If you are earning income in the country that you're living abroad in, how long have you been earning that? Are you working remotely from a US company? All of these things further complicate. So I would, which leads to number 5, write out, and this sounds really ridiculous, but I think that it would be quite helpful so that when you do talk to your tax professional or when you're thinking of these things, you're
Yes.
not leaving anything out. Write out your plan. Now, you probably
Okay.
already written out your plan or whatever, whatever. But when I'm talking about writing your plan, saying, okay, I am going to, how are you going to earn money? Is
Okay.
it going to be here or there? How much do you think you're going to be earning? Where will you live? Is this a corporate sponsored um, living
Position.
facility?
Mhm.
Are you getting reimbursed? Is the place that you're living in, going to be a part of the package deal of what your payment is? Um, how are you going if you're living abroad and you're working in that country? How are you getting paid? U.S. dollars, the conversion
That's
of
usually
that.
that is usually a huge, area that we encourage people to be paid in US dollars,
Mhm,
for a variety of reasons, so I'm glad that
mhm,
you're mentioning that,
mhm,
in this conversation.
mhm. So just those sorts of things. I just even remember, and this was just a vacation. We went down to Mexico 2 years ago, and one of the things that we decided to do, instead of taking the US dollar and converting it over to the
Pesos.
peso or what have you, we just used our credit card and let the credit card deal with the exchange of the value. That way we weren't losing money and we were not getting back um, currency that had no value to us that was left over because of the exchange.
Mhm.
And so that worked very well for us. So you may need to go even deeper in your planning is how are we going to spend money? So what currency you're getting paid in, and then how are you going to spend money while you're there? So these things are very important because the exchange rate, what that looks like for you, for your savings. I would want to still encourage you to save money.
Mhm.
Yes, you may be going to a country where the cost of living is 1/20th of what you're spending here in the US, but that doesn't mean you live a wild and carefree life.
Absolutely.
You still want to save, you still want to be wise in what you're spending on and what
Mhm.
these sorts of things and the implications of that. So that's very important. So make a plan as to how you're going to spend, how you're going to get paid, currency you're going to get paid in, how long you're going to be there for, how do you plan on sustaining yourself, all of those different things so that you can be aware of this so that when you do talk to your tax professional or your accountant or when you're even just keeping track of these things, you are aware of the plan and you're not sidetracked or suckered into doing something
Mhm.
that goes against your wealth building plan.
That is excellent because I think where I was going to, the question you have answered was, what do I need to present to a tax professional? What are they expecting to be able to give me the kind of guidance that I'm requesting? But also just to say, maybe even as an additional tip, is that regardless of who is filing on your behalf, the IRS holds you, the individual whose social security name and social security numbers are on that tax form responsible. So whether that is overpayment, underpayment, things that weren't supposed to be filed for, that just you have to understand the process, like you've shared before, Odessa, but also that the IRS holds you, not your tax preparer, responsible for either those underpayments or
Mhm,
missed opportunities. It's
mhm,
really up to you. So one question that I wanted to ask as we're kind of coming to a close is, it's Black Maternal Health Week. We are talking this week about opportunities that people might be considering for moving abroad, short term, like um, to birth and then have their time, uh, postpartum time outside the US. So that
mm,
could be anywhere from 3 months to 6 months. Um, and how might I look at positioning myself in that regard? So those are new expenses that, like you said, medical expenses, I'm paying for procedures outside of my normal regular. If you are leaving the country on a tourist visa for 6 months or less,
mhm.
how, what requirements, what obligations should we be prepared to share with our tax professional or with the Internal Revenue Service about where we've been and how we've been living our U.S. passport life?
Um, with that question, I think the IRS is more concerned. I don't know if it's so much about the time, but what was
Okay.
earned while you were there, if I
Okay.
remember correctly. Um, so let me rephrase that. Time is important if you've been living abroad for years and years and years and years and years. Um, but at the end of the day, you're still going to fill out Form 1040.
Hmm.
So the 1040 is going to be the same for myself or anyone living abroad. You still have to go through the whole thing. The only difference that's going to, well, the difference that's going to take place is when it comes to your earnings. Where did they come from?
Hmm.
So are you going to get are you living over in a foreign country, but you're working remotely from a US job? So, of course, your um, W-2s, you just do that as you normally would. Um, but the issue is going to come back to what I was talking about, that the foreign earned income,
Mhm.
those deductions and exclusions. Which do you qualify for, or which are you bound by? And so that's very, very important. And so that goes off into a very very complex situation there. So you really need to know what amount of earnings that you're going to have for that 12-month period that's going to be considered foreign earned income or not.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you have to report. If you're just going for 3 months, I mean, I don't think, let me not say, I mean, I don't think, but to my knowledge, if you were over there, so let's say you went on a 3-month vacation, that's that's not a report. It's not going to change what's reported on your 1040, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Mhm.
But if you are, so like if you're doing a mission trip or you are doing anything like that, then that's non-sponsored. But you decided, I'm going to just 3 months, I'm just going to have $10,000. I'm just going to blow it on traveling. It's just a travel
Mhm.
thing. But if I'm going somewhere for more than that and I'm actually going to be working and earning income
Mhm.
wherever I'm at, yes, that you would have to report that. And I'm living somewhere, and how is my living arrangements done? Those
Mhm.
are reportable things, if that makes sense. I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this goes back to also, even if you are moving abroad, you want to have a stable address so that if you are making an inquiry to the Internal Revenue Service, that they have somewhere to correspond with you. So, if that's your mother-in-law's house, wherever, you want to keep some kind of address in the state so that that communication can occur, and that you can receive updates if there are updates or additional questions that the Internal Revenue Service has about, well, this doesn't quite answer our questions, that
Mm-hmm.
you want to maintain some kind of, whether that's I think they're called like a digital mailbox, where you
Mm-hmm.
have somewhere where you can receive mail. They can scan it. Sometimes federal agencies will not deliver to certain places like PO boxes. So really check into. That's why having a tax professional can tell you the right way to set yourself up before you leave. Um, Short term, it sounds like you're okay because you're less likely to be earning income. Longer than that, you're going to need to tell Uncle Sam where, how you're
Mm-hmm.
earning that money, and be ready to submit whatever payments. Or at a minimum, y'all, please don't think you can't file you don't have to file. You have to file. You may not have to pay, but this whole session, we could have said this 50 times throughout. You have to file. You have to file. If you are a US citizen, Social Security, living on, dividends, or teaching English online, you do need to file. Any closing remarks, Odessa, as we tie this thing up? April 18th is coming. We got a few extra days because of Saturday and a Monday holiday. So, how do you want to close this out?
Well, just be mindful of the things. I don't know if I actually got to 7. I think I stopped on 5. But, you know, here's the thing. I tell clients and even my students, it is better to over communicate and overdo it than it is to do nothing. So, in other words, Your word of mouth is never going to be enough for the government. You've got to have documentation all the time, and you need to keep that and be aware of that. As and if you don't know, we talk about this all the time in the accounting area. We keep documents for 7 years. I
Mhm.
keep them for longer, but you need to keep things at least 7 years out, because you never know what's going to happen in case of an audit or something like that. But over prepare, in other words, just over prepare for a worst case scenario. If you think about what the worst thing that can happen, oh, what if I go and I get audited while I'm gone? What if someone steals my identity? And whatever, what if I can't find a tax professional that I trust? How do I keep when you think about those worst case scenarios, not to sound like a doomsday person, but what it does do, it calls you to action to say, let me go ahead and align these things up, keep documents, let me keep a digital copy, a hard copy. So, in other words, when I was talking about taking a picture, that doesn't mean just toss the paper away. No, no, keep it in an envelope, because you never know, and keep it in a dry, cool place, so that if you need to go back to the hard copy, it is there and it's still usable. I always tell people, put stuff in a nice little envelope, seal it up once you get done with your taxes. Every time you go to the store, you need to make a healthy habit. If you go to the doctor or get work on your car, or whatever it is that you're working on, that receipt doesn't just go on the dresser, it doesn't go in a drawer. Put it in an envelope. Mark your envelopes. This is my medical bills. This is what I paid to my church for charitable giving. This is what I've done for whatever. And then, of course, make a digital copy of that and put that somewhere in your Google Docs or what have you, Google Drive.
Mhm.
And so you have multiple places for this, just in case a worst case scenario happens. And you are always prepared. So always be prepared. If nothing else, always be prepared. And the last thing that I will say is just to make sure that you are spending wisely. That even though you're living abroad, and you may have money saved up to live abroad for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we are living in a world of inflation. And so you
Mhm.
want to make sure that your money is working for you, and that you're still setting money aside to sustain you in case of a worst case scenario. So it comes back to the worst case scenario. Always plan for the worst case scenario.
Absolutely. Fruitful conversation. I'm so thankful, Odessa, that you said yes, to sharing these tips with our audience, because whether you are a short term, looking at living abroad as a short term solution, or longer term, how you set yourself up will either keep you where you want to be or will require that you make different choices.
Mhm.
And eh, we're about living that best life. And
Absolutely.
yes, best life in compliance
Mhm.
with the federal government. I know that I mentioned that there are requirements, but when we don't follow through with these things that Odessa has mentioned, and we get into some tax difficulty with the Internal Revenue Service, your passport is a federal document. Your taxes are a federal payment, and that can impact your passport renewal or how you can move about the world.
Mm.
So please remember, these aren't your paying taxes is not filing taxes is not a choice. It is a requirement for citizenship, and we want you all to have a safe, productive, enjoyable, predictable experience as much as possible. So, thank you, Odessa. We are so grateful to have you. Again, this is H&D Abroad, where we are encouraging folk to consider moving abroad as a plan A for healthy lifestyle and generational wealth. Goodbye for now.